Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Lone Ranger, and welcome back to the Lone Ranger podcast. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be continuing on our journey of trust the process, the art of closing a deal. This time we're on part three, which is what's the problem? The discovery phase. We got a lot to cover, but before we get started, just want to say thank you for everybody that is supporting the Lone Ranger platforms. If you aren't following, you need to follow at the Lone Ranger '08 on TikTok or Instagram, or you can YouTube the Lone Ranger podcast and look for the symbol that you see in the front and the end of the show. But let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you've been following, we've been talking about the process and the roadmap of the beginning to the end of a sale. And it all starts with the foundation when you're introducing yourself to the prospect or to the borrower and you're explaining to them who you are, what you offer. You're getting permission to, start probing and asking questions. And then after the first step, you move on to the second step, which is qualifying the borrower, determining if they can pay for it, if they can authorize it. Does the product even match their problem or anything like that? And then once you've gotten through that phase, the next phase is finding the problem, trying to discover ways to connect your product or service to that problem so you can close the deal, so you can find a why behind the numbers. Now, when you're finding the problem, ask yourself, what desires does your product or your service fulfill for the client? Okay. If they're looking for a new car, what type of car are they looking for? Or if they're looking for a nanny service, what type of character traits do they want with the babysitter? Things like that. So when you're doing your evaluation to all my salesmen and loan rangers, it's very and very important for you to ask that question because if the answer is no, then you're wasting your time. You need to move on. The next thing you want to ask yourself is, has the prospect even mentioned anything yet? And so far in the process that you can identify as a problem. Have they mentioned, oh, I want to pay off my debts because money's tight and I have to decide between paying a bill or buying groceries. Did they mention anything like that during this particular process or the first stages of the process rather? And the last thing is, does the prospect even know what they want to do? Because sometimes they call in, in my line of work, they get a letter in the mail saying they can get equity out, but they really don't know what goals they have. They really don't know, the penalties that come with paying interest only loans or they don't really see a problem with their finances because all their bills are paid on time, yet they have no money in the bank. So these are things that you have to question yourself before you can determine what type of presentation you can present. Now, one thing I want you guys to note here is the more problems that you can discover, the more solutions your service provides. So, you know, when you're asking these probing questions, you want them to basically spill the beans. You want them to tell you everything you need to know to close the deal. And if you listen and take notes, you'll have a pretty nice arsenal going into your presentation. But one of the things you want to do as a salesman is be empathetic to the problem. Don't treat them like, another number or another transaction or what have you. These are real people and they have real problems. And these problems can affect their lives, their careers, their families, and you are going to be solving that problem that's going to, hit the reset button on all those areas in their life. So that's very important that you understand the reason behind finding the why behind the what, if you will. Now, knowing the prospect's problems before you present to them, there's two ways you want to look at it. It makes it when you identify the problems, point them out to them, it makes them aware of the problem, and it also kind of gives them an idea of how important solving this problem is. So, for example, like in my line of work, if I'm saving them $800 a month, and they just told me that they spend $600 a month on food. Well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with this loan, I'm saving you $800 a month. There's your food and gas bill right there. You see what I'm saying? Like matching the solution with the problem through fact finding and understanding what they're saying. and jotting that down on your list. Now, this also, again, helps the salesman because now we can customize the presentation. We can match again their problem with our solution. So it gives you confidence going into the presentation because now you know what their problems are, you've identified it, they've acknowledged it, and now you can move on with the presentation. We're setting up the presentation by taking all of those things into account. Now, there's going to be some questions that you can ask to kind of get them to open up, peel back those layers. So when you're, asking them what their goals are, and they say, "Oh, I want to, pay off some credit cards right now," I would ask them something simple like, "Is this causing a strain on your finances right now?" They'll say yes. Or, "What problems, is this credit card debt causing for you right now?" Or, you know, are the minimum payments or are the high interest on these credit cards, is it starting to become a problem for you? Yes, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of some simple open-ended questions that you can ask. Depending on what you're selling, you'll have to determine what those open-ended questions are. But it's very, very important that you ask those questions because now you're starting to strengthen the rapport with the borrower. They're beginning to trust you more, beginning to open up more. And now you can take more control of the call, of the process, and walk them through the next step of the process, which is going to be discussed on the next episode, which is setting up the presentation. So another short, quick episode for you guys. I hope that was very helpful. But that's basically the next step before you prep for the presentation. And in the next episode and the one to follow, we're going to be getting in the actual presentation itself and how you can present those numbers to solve those problems. But until then, God bless. Thanks for tuning in. It's the Lone Ranger signing out.